everybody. Welcome back to Deciphering My Experience. My name is Eric, and we are joined here today by Penny Bradley, Knock-Waffen pilot, and John Warner IV. And we are going to be having a big roundtable discussion on all kinds of things. I want to chat with John, picking up where we left off. And Penny wants to join in because she had heard the previous show and has some questions as well. And I always love talking with Penny. So welcome, everybody. How you doing today, Penny?
I was so excited about this that I didn't sleep at all. So I'm going to warn everybody I'm nighty-night crazy, and we'll see how that goes.
How you doing today, John?
I only got 4 hours sleep. I couldn't sleep either, but I think it was my wife snoring more than. And then I had a dream I had to build a race car. I don't know. It was very strange. I couldn't sleep.
It's funny. I couldn't sleep, but I'm all fired up and excited. I actually have a bit of good news to announce on the front end of the show today. My website, at long last, is actually up and running. So Deciphering My Experience has its own home platform now, so I cannot get deplatformed officially. You will be seeing me on YouTube still, and I will be putting content out there, but now I will have a more secure position to operate from, and it is deciphering.tv. The link will be in this comment section below for the first time ever, so I invite everybody to come check out my new website. I will be putting up the archives from a lot of the stories that I cover, the CIA website, the documents, the PDFs. They will be available for download. If you don't want to download them, in the archive section, you can just simply peruse them. You can take a look, comment, talk to folks, and let them know what you think about deciphering your experience. So I just thought everybody might want to take a look at that, and we'll get that ball rolling. All kinds of fun things happening, and we'll have all kinds of folks on there. I'll be able to go live from there, and I've spoken to Penny about this in the past, and I've invited Penny to have the opportunity, because I know it's very hard for people nowadays to find a place to safely get their voice out there, and I very much want to afford Penny my platform to get her voice out there. And there's going to be other people that I'm going to be chatting with as well to get into the mix, because we're going to have 24 hours a day of availability of truth to spread. So I'm just looking to help people do that. But back to where we're at today, folks, because there's all kinds of fun things. And since we started with dreams and rough nights, I think that was a topic that had come up last time, John, was you had said something last time about lucid dreams. So
I had a wonderful dream about you, Eric.
Oh, excellent. If I had $1 for every time I heard that, John.
Well, I was dreaming about crossbows from Germany.
Yeah, mine wasn't much better. I was picking up different parts from people in Connecticut to build some sort of race car, and they were not nice people. I had to deal with some real jerk-offs in my dream, but I only slept a couple hours, so I got up. My wife made me coffee and her famous toast, and that was it. 4 hours was enough, sort of.
That's why God gave us coffee.
Well, Lou's been keeping me supplied with coffee so that I will be awake for this, but odds are that when we're done, I'm going to be crashing.
No worries, no worries. So I had another question for you, John. One of the other things that was brought up in the last, hey, there you go. In the last conversation, you had mentioned UFO tracking systems and or capabilities. Could you elaborate on what you know about that? That's kind of news to me, this idea of the tracking systems in any type of specificity. Like, I've only heard it loosely referenced.
As far as my knowledge go, they have all kinds of technologies now. It's not like 40 years ago when they were just still back engineering, stuff and sort of making it work. They've really come a long way in the last 40 years. I had a conversation a year or two ago with my ONI U.S. Navy captain friend, Daniel. And Daniel and I have known each other from childhood, so we're like brothers. Yeah, I talk about synchronicity. He and I were born 15 minutes apart at the same hospital on the same day. So anyway,
Right.
he said, I get, I plied him with red wine, and we were getting along really fine. And I said, what can you tell me that the Navy's got as far as, observational and tracking system? He says, no, you don't understand. We've got manned satellites. The Air Force has theirs, the Navy has theirs. And they're two-man crew, as far as I know, and they're serviced by B-2 anti-gravitic bombers, which is why those suckers cost $2 billion a piece. And so he said they can track, I'll quote him, you can track those bastards coming in and out of the atmosphere really far away from the Earth, superluminal speeds. And he said that even if they go under the water 25 miles or under land 25 miles, they've still got them. But that's what he said, and it jives with everything else I've heard about out there in the zeitgeist. So I think they have no problem. One of my issues with Chris Mellon when I had a meeting with him was, he's like, everything's a mystery. We got to figure out what's going on. I said, are you sure? I've heard that the U.S. Navy has, thousands of charts, with each craft and who's driving it and where they're from and what they're up to. These are detailed schematics and files. None of this mystery crap. So that's when I knew he was kind of, beating around the bush and lying.
He may think it's classified.
Oh, I'm sure he does. Is that what you meant?
Yes, he may think it's classified and that he can't tell his cousin.
Oh, I'm sure. He's one of those guys who's very conservative, and he takes his security oath very seriously. But and it irritated me because he said, you and Tom DeLonge think alike. Now, I don't know. I have nothing against the guy. The guy's heart's in the right place, but I've got nothing in common with that ding dong riding a skateboard, popping ecstasy at age 45. And Greer told me that. And it's like, come on, rock and roller. What is he doing? An activist doesn't join the deep state and the military industrial complex to get the truth out. That's not going to work. You don't get in bed with the opposite numbers.
It does usually work in the reverse historically, though, is the military industrial complex loved getting in bed with the activists. That's what they did with Cohen.
Yes.
Sure. It literally so.
Yep. That's a big hop.
Generally, if it works the other direction, it means there's some sort of blackmail involved.
Yeah. So,
I think that was the MO as well.
That's what I know about the tracking systems. You name it. I've heard that, cell towers.
That's a little farther along than I thought they would be willing to admit to. So
I'm surprised he admitted that to me, because he's very conservative. He's retired, but he's like, I think they're given, my feeling is that my own eye friend and Chris Mellon are given a very thin report, and it's very perfunctory, and it's like, this is it. And they're like, yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think Chris knows a little more than that, but that's just my feeling. I have no proof of that. I really didn't feel like he was holding back so much as just sort of trying to recruit me into that TTSA thing. I was just like, no way, man. Jim Semivan, Hal Puthoff is a Scientologist. Those guys are,
They're dangerous.
Yeah. Jimmy Semivan, I've heard, has the rank of a 3-star general, in, not actuality, but if he walks into the Pentagon, they're like, oh, hey, Jim. He has that kind of a rank and pull. He can get things done, is what I've been told.
I feel like one of the benefits that I had growing up and working like I did on Long Island in all these different people's homes when I would regularly get engaged in conversations like you were having, John, with folks, and I mean, Long Island is a repository for retired military industrial complex folks. This is what they all did for a living, and then they're retired out, and, you know, I'm surrounded by, you know, previous Grumman employees or Brookhaven employees or Calverton employees, you know, just you name it. They're all over the place. The place is crawling with guys from programs.
They're slumming at the Hamptons, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And then I'd wind up fixing their sink, and I'd see all the, you know, the memorabilia around and the ribbons and the medals and stuff. And I would always engage folks, and they would always tell me all kinds of stuff, all the great stories from their past. And as individual compartment stories, they didn't really add up too much. But now looking back cumulatively and seeing what all these guys were up to, and wait, but this guy was doing this and this guy was in that program, you know, and it's amazing that, you know, everybody thinks that if they're all like, oh, well, if that was going on, somebody would know something and they would tell us.
Oh, sure.
It's so wrong.
That dovetails into a very interesting subject, which I'm sure Penny would like, and that is the occult symbology of all those medals and rank insignia and military flags and banners and all that stuff. That is a fascinating subject because it has everything to do with the occult. You know, multiple crosses, iron crosses, you know, Christ, the royalty.
Silver crosses.
Crap. Yeah.
Rewarding people for things that are like technically morally wrong.
Yeah, I mean, my dad's got.
You go to war, you're officially. What is going on?
Yeah, my dad's got more medals in his, you know, on his wall and all those banners and everything. I mean, he's like a Soviet admiral. You know, they just keep giving you dozens and dozens of medals, you know, for doing, I don't know, you know, Chernobyl-like activities or something. You know, but the symbology of that is fascinating. And it's hard to decipher that, but there are people who have written books on that. But it's all carefully designed, all of it. All the gold braid, you know, it all has, you know, occult meaning if you go back far enough. Mm. What is your view on that, Penny?
Well, I had to do a lot of research into it when I was checking into my family background, and like the necklace I have on today is a silver cross, and it's, among other things, it's the symbol for the Merovingian dynasty, and I'm wearing it because I'm descended from them. And it doesn't mean I'm special. It doesn't mean I'm rich. It doesn't mean I'm powerful. It just means that's where my family came from. And in the course of doing research with the groups of veterans, I found out that most of us are Merovingian, which is something that Max Spears said 5-6 years ago, that the Merovingian bloodline was targeted for these projects.
Why do you think? Why? Because of genetics, or?
Because, well, the mythos is that the Merovingians were the Grail line, and that would make them descendants of the Son of God. And so the genetics would be different. And part of that mythos is that they're able to do magic. And the CIA was looking for psi abilities. And I came back with psi abilities. Whether I was born with them or trained into them is a question I wonder. I've met other members of this bloodline, and they have psi abilities as well. So
hence the crown of higher knowledge.
Some of it's the crown of higher knowledge, and some of it is I think it's actually genetics. In the secret society that says they're protecting this family line. They maintain that only RH negatives and carriers for it can do magic, that the rest are playing a game they can't win. Since I'm RH positive, they are not, they're dumbfounded that I'm able to do some of the things that I've proven I can do. I don't prove them in videos. I don't make a display of it, but when I've gotten angry, I've blown up electronics. Misha Johnston, I'll be interviewing her tomorrow. She holds a 3 times a week meeting for different people with oddities. Usually one of these sessions a week is for people with SSP. And in the beginning, when I was first public, she had everybody in there together, Starseeds, Me Labs, SSP, Montauk people, all of us in together. And I was getting frustrated by listening to the trouble of the Starseeds. Yes, I know it's very disturbing for them, but when you're listening to someone worrying about something having to do with dream state and you're dealing with flashbacks, it's very hard to be patient, and I would get frustrated. And pretty soon everybody's circuit breakers were turning off in their house, except the one that their computer was on to talk to me with. And by the 3rd time this happened, I realized it was me, and I had to stop going because I was costing them money, because I wasn't just turning them off, I was blowing them up. So that was something that we verified through Misha's group. And I have a set of videos on my YouTube where Don Piffalo from Reality Brief recorded what I could remember at that point, and the 6th video has an outtake where I was getting so emotionally upset that I was flickering the lights in his house. And
you should bring Eric along next time. He can fix all of that stuff. You know,
as long as you don't live where it's hot.
Blow the fuses, Eric.
I don't work where it's hot anymore.
Whenever Lou and I were at Eric's house, I don't think I messed up the electronics. Did I?
Mm-mm. I'm hardened. My stuff has to do with me too.
So yeah, I did have problem with a book I read there, and I started shifting altars like I was a Rolodex, but I've got that slowed down to dull roar now. I still shift altars frequently, but not nearly that bad. And
I recommend everybody studies the Comte de Saint Germain.
Yes, it was the Comte de Saint Germain, his book. And
oh, I just read part of that.
Yeah, the Hebrew script in it was what did it.
Wow.
I can't read the Hebrew, but I recognize it. That's what it was. And something about that, I would just go, and it was like shifting so quickly that I actually went blind in my left eye for about an hour. And it was really disturbing to me. And I guess from comments that were made by the other folks in the house, I was an absolute pain in the ass for a couple of days. So I do have a deep appreciation for people who put up with me, especially in close quarters over time. I really do. I have a man I live with. He's a good man, and we've been together for 20 years, and he hasn't walked out on me yet, and I'm really grateful for that. But if I remember, I was supposed to be talking about the military symbolism. Okay, oak leaves go back to
The Druids, correct?
ancient Greece.
The
priesthood in Mesopotamia and Greece worshipped oak trees almost as much as the Druids do.
Well, that makes sense.
Yes, there are still Druids. I'm acquainted with someone from the Druid Council. He's a really interesting character.
Does this have?
Sometimes he's just okay. But the oak leaves go back to that. The crosses, like the Iron Cross and the Solar Cross, and the ones that are a stylized cross in a circle, those go back to at least Mesopotamia, and there are places where they're back before the last ice age, carved into stones. So those are really, really ancient, and they're not Christian as people assume.
No, I've read that they've been the symbol for the creational proton or sound resonance of the cosmos, the actual,
the Aum's chord,
like that. In the Bible it says, in the beginning the Word was with God and the Word was God, and what a lot of people think that means is that the universe and cosmos came into being via sound resonance. Yeah. And that the Maltese cross, Iron Cross, everything like that is representative. There's multiple meanings to symbols, which makes our job really hard. But that's the more ancient one. It's like people put that in there, and they celebrate that. They worship that creational, which is the goddess worship of the Freemasons, that feminine creational power that the cosmos has.
I hadn't heard that one, so this is a new concept for me. I had heard about the creation being done through sound, through vibration. That the vibration of the original chord was what created everything, the dimensional differences, the frequency levels, and my experience of that as a navigator in space is that if you are exactly on the frequency, it is as physical as 3D is for us. So this is a very complex, multi-layered reality, and that's not even changing timelines, that's just in hours. And so I hadn't considered that the Solar Cross would represent that.
I got that from David Wilcock, one of his podcasts once. And a pattern of the Maltese cross. I've got a copy of it. And if you do a cymatic, which is a 3D sound image, you'll see the Maltese cross in it. And what frequency it is, I'm not sure. But I have a list of hundreds of cymatics. This gets into another area of study, which is star forts. They resemble cymatics of sound and also snow. So there's something sacred geometry going on there.
My friend Michael Lee Hill is working with cymatics with,
See
oh
that
yeah,
there, Penny? So that
yeah,
there, just the 6 points, right? Could be
yeah,
a hexagon in one iteration. It could be the Chiro, the Laborum, which we see as the cross right there in a 2D form. But also now picture those 6 points being 3-dimensional, where 2 of them are crossing each other on the same plane, and the other one is dropping down perpendicular through the middle of them. And that would be commonly the cross of St. George, as represented on many churches in that position. And when
Yeah,
you're talking about ancient stuff in navigation, it's also the XYZ axis, if you want to look at it that way.
yes.
wasn't
That's what I immediately saw was the XYZ axis.
I thought Emperor Constantine used that as his logo as
Oh,
well.
that was
Yeah.
Constantine's,
Yeah.
that's Constantine's cross as well, the Chiro. The Laborum, I think, might have been what he referred to it as. And yes, he, this is another interesting history lesson, is that, Constantine kicked the crap out of the Christians, and on the next day basically made himself the leader of the Christians, and had the Council of Nicaea, rewrote everything. And once again, we see history repeating itself, that, all the people think they know something about their own past have all been bamboozled.
Yeah, I've
Well,
heard that Emperor Constantine made a deal with some of the regressives, and also the church in Istanbul. After they burned the Library of Alexandria down, they were trying to control the spirituality and the narrative, even 2,000 years ago, or whatever the timeline really is.
well, the Flavian emperors had written the Bible in the first place. They had Josephus living with them, and so he wrote the history of the Jews, and he wrote down what we have of the Bible, because when at the fall of Jerusalem, all the copies of the Bible that there were destroyed. So what we have as a Bible was written by Josephus with the Flavian emperors. And that was where Orthodox Christianity came from. And then a couple hundred years later, you've got Constantine rewriting it for his purposes. But both sets needed a way to unify the empire, because the beliefs from before that had lost their power as the empire expanded. And you had all of these disparate groups with different gods, different beliefs, and they were at each other's throats. And Judaism was making great inroads, and suddenly you had this Jewish Messiah that people were talking about. So the emperors decided, we can use this, but we're going to make it where it's not a religion of rebellion. We're going to make it a religion of peace and submission to the government.
It was also based on Mithraism, because that was the most popular faith in the Roman Empire before Christianity came along. And lo and behold, Mr. Mithra had 12 disciples, just like Jesus. So I think they took that Mithraism and they folded it into that new concept of Christianity as a control system to keep people from rebelling.
I know in the military, Sol Invictus was the most popular, and that's why that they had the aura, the halo around Jesus, and
Yeah.
they had that right from archaeology shows that in that town in Israel where the apostles lived, the very first church, Capernaum. The very first church in Capernaum had Jesus already at that time with the Sol Invictus halo.
Yeah.
So these
the
are
cults in Rome were numerous as well. I mean, that's where we get Son of God, is the worshiping the sun. Solar cults go back to ancient Egypt, and probably well before that, Atlantis and everything, well into the deep, deep antiquity. The sun giveth, and
Well, the
hold
idea of being born in December and being born of a virgin and dying and being dead 3 days and rising from the dead, there are probably 20 pagan gods that all have that same pattern. Horus is an example. The Isis Osiris myth.
Well, that reminds me, ISIS, on my history forum, it's called stolenhistory.net. And somebody posted the statue of the woman that's on top of the US Capitol. And that's basically representative of ISIS. And of course, below her are fasces, which is a symbol of Roman authority and fascism. But the dome of the US Capitol is the female aspect. Obviously, the Washington Monument is the male aspect. The reflecting pool reflects the Washington Monument below, so it as above, so below. And then the Lincoln Memorial, I believe, is the balance point of those energies. And of course, it has columns, and all these things are piezoelectric. And Washington D.C. is, I'm sure, is built on a nodal point of ley lines. There's so much energy flowing around here. It's just that it's been used wrongly by a lot of groups for a long time. But I think that's changing.
John, would you have any speculation as to when you say that this system exists and it has a piezoelectric capacity to it, for what this structure is supposed to do? Like, why is it there? Why would it be generating this energy?
No one knows for sure. But what I think is going on is telluric energy is electromagnetism running underground, especially running water. And so you couple, stone is a technology. This is in the last 10 years, people have come to. That's why the pyramids were built of several different types of stone. They have insulating qualities. They have energy flow qualities, and granite versus pink granite versus black granite, sandstone, all that. And so the combinations thereof, the Freemasons, they have their knowledge going back to the Egyptian mystery schools, wink, and so they know some of this.
Wink. No, it's common knowledge.
Yeah.
The Masons go back to the Egyptian mystery schools, but Washington D.C. was deliberately laid out.
Oh yeah.
To amplify all of that.
Yep.
And I don't think it's an accident that the National Masonic Lodge headquarters is right in the center of that.
It's near the 7th meridian. There's a shrine to the 7th meridian that goes right through DC. It's up on 16th Street. It's not far from the Masonic Temple. My guess is it's the alignment of that is on the same alignment. And so, it's Freemason ground zero here in DC. Alexandria has a huge George Washington temple. And when I went in to quiz some of those guys, they were all porch masons. They weren't in the big house having cigars and brandy with the guys in the coats and ties. They were all porch masons. And they didn't know half the symbology I do. And, I'm not even that good in it. And they were like, oh, that's interesting. I never heard that, and I'm telling them all these symbols.
They might tell you that anyway. My great-grandfather was 33rd degree Mason. And when he died, my great-grandmother made sure I got his morals and dogma, which was not supposed to happen because I was a child and a girl. Her kids were mortified. It was, why her? But yeah, I've read it and read it and read it and read it, and without initiation, you don't understand everything. But there's a plan behind it, and there has always been a plan behind the United States. It was like a
John D. New Atlantis.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this has been an ongoing plan since John D. At least, maybe before that. And one of the things I found about the Enochians is that they required blood sacrifices in order to give him information.
Yeah.
None of their magic works without blood.
Right. It's a deal with the devil, so to speak.
And for angels, that's pretty graphic. Well, angels can be either polarity.
That's right. All those wings.
And so you've got Enochian magic being used, and look at how much technological progress we have made as a species, or two species, since John Dee. Now, I've had a thesis that I'm working on trying to prove through history, and that is that the Enochian magic is what started the technology that became the German space program in space.
Oh, I think so. John Dee went to Prussia, correct?
John Dee went to Prussia, but his assistant, his sidekick, Edward Kelly, ended up with the emperor of what was left of the Holy Roman Empire.
That sounds right.
So I know they went to Bohemia first, and Bohemia is what is now called the Czech Republic. So these were all interwoven. Prussia is not far from the Czech Republic, and Prussia, what became the Greater German Empire, and over time, and it's all of this information that he got through blood offerings, which at the time were his own blood or Edward Kelly's, but there's reason to believe that all these wars have been blood sacrifices in exchange for technologies.
Oh, I agree. And I've written that into my new novel. My character finds that out. He figures it out through everything. And in World War II, you know, he's an American ONI guy. You know, once you realize what's really going on planet Earth, all these wars, all these sacrifices, you know, all the missing MIAs, you know, Vietnam, what's really going on? It's about, you know, energy, genetics, in a smaller capacity, I guess, food. But it's all about an energy exchange, you know.
There's
what we're getting for it.
I believe that we actually have two species here. That one is Homo sapiens, and the other one is a hybrid between Homo sapiens and the beings historically known as Anunnaki. So,
what do you think about the Aborigines? They're so different from everyone else. I was always wondering if they had their own set of genetics, which I think is great if they do.
I understand that they are considered to be a Caucasian race.
I had heard that the Aborigines have a special mental capacity to remember things in a way that other people seem to not be able to. That their ability to recall things in great detail is to the extreme.
Yeah, you're right, Eric. That's, to my knowledge, they have incredible, you know, storytelling abilities, which is the way knowledge was passed down in the old days. But also their musical instruments, the didgeridoo, produces incredible range of sound vibrations, especially on the lower octaves and things like that. Okay. So they're definitely tapped into the universe in that sense. Most indigenous peoples that, you know, shy away from technology in big cities, they're definitely more tapped into Gaia and Mother Nature and the universe, because that was natural for them. You know, it's like the Americans, you know, when we genocided all the Native American tribes, you know, a lot of that, I think, was perhaps an Illuminati or some other agenda whereby, you know, let's cleanse the land of these spiritual people so they can't interfere with our, you know, money, Babylonian type systems and, you know, warlike in industry. Yeah.
I saw it as a continuation of the war against people with psi abilities. That's what the that's what the Albigensian Crusade was about. That was what the Prussian Crusade was about. That was what the Inquisition was about, was getting rid of the people that had been known as the elven folk. And by the way, guys, those were real people. They were not wee little things with wings. They were human beings.
I'm curious if either of you could clarify. So I follow what you're saying, that there's like an outside force that's putting us to war so that we can either get offed in mass and there's some sort of a blood ritual going on that is to the benefit of the non-humans in this exchange. But now in reality, like let's say that we're on the battlefield, right? So now let's say you send 100,000 troops in from one side, you send 100,000 troops in from the other side. The idea is they're going to chop each other up, create a bloody mess that's to the benefit of this other thing. How is this other thing, like I think mechanically, right? So are they like invisible in the middle of the field soaking up the energy? Are they in a spaceship above? I guess, again, invisible, soaking up. Like how's, like we deliver the troops to the battlefield, they deliver technology. How do they receive their benefit in this? Clarify more on that. What's the benefit to them and how do they reap it?
I think it's from underground, probably more than anything. And there's a frequency, I think, the frequency of death. This gets into the story of the Mothman of West Virginia. What I've read about that species of interdimensional people is that they're not killing people, but at the moment of death, they're very interested in studying that energy. And perhaps they do feed off some of that, but they don't cause deaths. But probably the regressives, I think they're able to, live off that and maybe even store it, buy it, sell it, manipulate it.
Well, the books that were the Enochians talking to Edward Kelly and John Dee, they were feeding off the blood itself, but they never physically appeared before them. They used a medium of, I believe it was a quartz sphere. They used the surface of that as a scrying instrument, and they were able to see words, but they never actually saw the Enochians. And there's a similar thing that happened with both the Maya and the Aztec, where that their kings would offer blood or blood sacrifices on the temples in exchange for information about how to take care of their people. Depending on which tribe it was, either the king would go into a very dark place and cause his own bloodletting, and he would come out in a blood loss trance, or they would be ripping the hearts out of people on top of the temples and tossing the bodies off the side.
Gotta love Quetzalcoatl.
Yeah, so
it seems
this is not a new concept. People need to understand it didn't actually start with John Dee, but he tapped into something that was very ancient. And my understanding from some of these secret societies is that these religions that are requiring blood sacrifices are as old as humanity itself and came from outside of us. So these are real, what we would call ET-based religions, where these sacrifices are required by ETs.
I wonder if this is only in our galaxy or if it's others.
I don't know. My time in space, we never encountered another race that was experiencing this.
Interesting.
At least not with the German fleet. This was something. In Shula, we studied religion and its effect on humanity, and how it could be used to mind control people and manipulate people into doing things that were horrific. In fact, when I was there, yes, I was part of the elite Schwarzsonne, but it wasn't a religion. It was a psionic practice. It was more like Tai Chi, except that you had these abilities that you used. There was no religion to it. We were functional atheists. These were human abilities we were using, magnified by the black goo that we ingested, where the enlisted men used Asatru as ancestor worship or honoring your ancestors. They weren't worshiping a god.
It's like Shinto in Japan.
Yeah. So it's very different than how people here are viewing Asatru as, oh, the gods. In space, there were no gods. Gods were dangerous because they mind controlled you. And the gods that we met out there were all very physical, very human-like ETs, and they were all flawed, and they all had agendas, and the good of humanity was not their agenda.
Yeah.
Penny, is it safe to say that the other places that you went, though,
Sorry.
is it
Law
safe
of attraction in Hermetic law. You know, if you go out there with a certain intention, law of intention, I think, and due to the law of attraction, you will attract like-minded people. It's kind of like what's happening with us today, and my friends last night on YouTube that I was chatting with. There's that the universe, the synchronicity will work towards, you know, whatever you're seeking. I'm trying to do better with Hermetic law, but
What happened was, I'm going to just blurt it out. The Germans were trying to escape an attempted genocide here, and they left. But everything out there is already owned by somebody else. And so they had to literally make a deal with the Draco just to have real estate to park their butts on. And the deal was that the Germans would become part of their military in exchange for having places to live. And so we, and I say we because I have served 91 60 and backs with these people. I have spent more time with them than I have here.
wow.
So we were trapped in this situation because there was literally nowhere else to go. Earth and the solar system are smack dab in the middle of their empire.
They would the Draco not allow them to go beyond the Empire? Did they trick them in any way? The breakaway?
What they did was they set it up in such a way where we had no other options. And they made the terms so outrageous that right from the get-go, the Germans knew that they were in trouble. But what had been happening on Earth for the last 100 years had been worse. Now, most Americans have no clue what real German history is.
Yeah.
I know. I've been reading the first 100 pages of your little ends-on set.
Forgive my mistakes. You know, I wrote that.
You have more understanding of Germany and German-speaking countries in those time periods than the average American does. Oh, no. I talk about the Weimar Republic, and these people are clueless.
Yeah, the Weimar was brutal.
They have no idea that even happened. How many millions of German people starved and froze to death during the Weimar Republic?
Yeah, it's, you know, it's a weird thing, the Weimar. That's a whole nother subject, because the creativity also, you know, the jazz music and the arts and Cubism and you know, my book cover is Bauhaus, and these are all products of the Weimar. But there was also a terrible cost. Banks printing their own money, yeah, like Deutsche Bank does today, or any big bank. That's where inflation comes from.
Yeah,
And
they just
so they try to
just printed it until
yeah.
it was absolutely worthless.
And the one really stupid thing the Versailles Treaty did, I'm sure you know this, is that they say, give up all your weapons. And they did. And guess what? They started over from scratch in the late 20s and early 30s with brand new designs. And that's another reason why they were way ahead in World War II.
Well, they had
using World War I weapons. The Germans had fresh gear. I mean,
they had the Foil Society doing what today we would call CE5, and they were getting contact with Aldebaran and the Draco. So they were getting designs from ETs. And when you look at the interviews that these German scientists from Operation Paperclip gave, they say, yes, we had outside help. They admit it freely.
Herman Oberth said that after the war, I think during the Nuremberg trials. He's like, you know, how were you so far advanced? He said, we had help from people from other worlds, like it was no big deal. And of course, you know, FDR and the American military, they had dealt with crashed UFOs, and they were just beginning to back engineer some stuff in 42, you know, at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. It was just Wright Field in those days. You know, but they were like, I write about this in my new book, and they're like, you know, they can't make heads or tails of it. But the Germans were way ahead because they had philosopher scientists going back to the 18th century who understood.
Well, they had been working on stuff. Prussia and the United States had been in an alliance, and they were sharing all this information. The precursor to the OSS was working with the Prussian NIMSA.
Yeah.
And
the
these
1897 airship mystery was the result of that.
I live very close to Sonora.
Ooh, oh, I didn't know that. You got some monatomic gold out there in the gold fields?
Probably, but I don't have access to it.
That's why they were there. One of the reasons, the gold. And also, I don't know, I guess it's the Prussian industrialists, the chemical companies probably came up with the red mercury serum for that, you know, those crude 1850s airships.
Now, what they were doing was they were working on an anti-grav engine. They were working on the fuel, because when you put straight mercury into an anti-grav engine, it turns into gold right away. And the red dye, or whatever it was supposed to slow that down, and it did. What they didn't know about was radiation.
Yeah.
So when the Hanabu ships went into space, the crews got radiation sickness and died.
That's crazy, because people like Walter Gerlach and the other physicists, they should have known about the radiation. So I don't know.
They were operating the same time period as Marie Curie was working on radium. They had no idea.
Oh, no, back in the 1800s, no.
They had no idea that this was going on. That was why whenever those people in Texas buried the stuff from the ship, people who drank water from the well got sick, was because of the radiation and the mercury.
Don't forget, there's a lot of the powers that be that just don't care about the expendability of the people that they put to task.
No, absolutely.
When I was a plumber,
of course not.
When I was a plumber,
part of the blood offering.
I would go to people's homes and engage my customers and have conversations on whatever I could connect with. I met a lot of people that were from the former Soviet Union. And because I had a past in submarines, there was a topic that could come up. And I would find out from them that when they were in the former Soviet Republic, it was completely understood that if someone in your family was mandatorily volunteered into the Soviet submarine program, that's a death sentence.
Yeah, it was
And
terrible.
they all knew why. It was going to be radiation sickness.
There was a
Like
friend
all
of
these people knew better and should have done stuff. It doesn't mean anything. The Soviet Union knew how to properly shield a reactor, and they chose not to because it made the boats more maneuverable.
My family had a family friend who had been on the first American nuclear submarine and
Nautilus.
the Nautilus, and they supposedly had shielding, but that man died in his 50s from stomach cancer from the radiation.
Yeah, no,
So they weren't doing much, if any, better.
You know, Eric, I once met Admiral Rickover with my dad at the Naval Academy, and I talked with him about the first nuclear subs.
Mm-hmm.
And the radiation conversation. This is 35 years ago, maybe longer. But I remember bringing up, you know, was radiation a problem? And he said, well, you know, it wasn't as good as it should have been, and other things. But he's another eccentric genius that comes out of history, like Porsche is in my book, and Walter Gerlach. And of course, that gets into reincarnational lives and, you know, practicing your arts over and over again in countless lifetimes. But I always find it interesting, the singular geniuses, quote unquote, that move society forward in spurts. It's a fascinating subject.
That was something that we found because I did spend time at Montauk. That was what we found at Montauk, that the butterfly effect was not true, that most individuals do not matter. They are simply filler. But that there are individuals, key individuals, who make a difference. And those people you cannot touch without changing the timeline.
Let's hope the three of us are in that category. You know, hey, you know, please. You
know. They've tried to kill me and not been able to. So far,
I kill myself, you know, either in a race car at 200 miles an hour, or I just slipped on ice the other day. I don't know.
I don't even like the thought.
I don't know how I survived that. My head hit.
We all eventually go when it's our time.
Exactly.
I don't like to think of all the stuff that I've done to knock into my head or wipe out, or the wrecks that I've been in. I don't even like to think about it. It hurts me now. And I just pray that things like that don't ever happen again, because I can't imagine how I got out of stuff that I did before.
I've been dead 7 times and been sent back every time, and usually scolded by someone on the other side and told it's not your time, your job isn't done, you have to go back. The last time I was dragged back kicking and screaming because I did not want to come back. I
don't blame you.
I once wrecked out a 1969 Baja Bug that had a really great drivetrain in it. And yeah, it's a shame. But
ladies and gentlemen, Eric Hecker, our hero.
I wrecked that thing really badly, and I had a full-blown out-of-body experience. And I was like, it was like the roof of the vehicle was off, and I could look down and see my body in the vehicle. And
yeah, that's how it works.
And I'm going to be straight. It was like I was floating above the vehicle, and there was a guy that looked like Jesus Christ on my side, and we were both like looking down in the vehicle. And I remember hearing a lady screaming and yelling. She must have been on the scene. Like, she was screaming, "He's dead, he's dead, he's dead." And I remember looking at the Jesus dude, and I'm like, "I'm not dead, I'm fine." And I remember him just like looking at me and smiling, and I popped back up in my body in the Volkswagen. I was in the passenger side of the vehicle now. I had been in the driver's seat, but I didn't have my seatbelt on. So I wound up in the passenger seat, and I jumped up. The passenger side of the vehicle was demolished, so I had to get out of the driver's side. And I remember getting out, and now people were amassing around the vehicle. And I remember getting out of the vehicle, standing up, literally putting my hands up and being like, "It's okay, I'm fine." And then I collapsed in the street.
Eric, that was me. It wasn't Jesus.
Oh, thank you, John.
That was a
Okay.
fun ride we had.
I mean, your hair was probably much darker and your beard
Yeah.
a little bit rattier, but
The last time I died, I was dragged back by a pair of angels. So, one of each polarity.
Wow.
They dragged me out together. So it was a real interesting thing. The two of them have been sticking around. They said that they were supposed to make sure I was safe.
That's interesting. I've had lost time. I don't know if it was a out of body experience, but I was at night in the rain. I was at the Daytona 24 Hours in 2001.
Mm.
Dale Earnhardt and his son. This is a road race, not NASCAR. And I was I lost a few laps. I just, you're doing your job, and it was incredibly dangerous. You couldn't see anything. It was just nothing but spray, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, we're all going to die." And I remember losing a couple laps, and my crew chief calling me on the radio and going, "Where the fuck are you?" And I said, "What? And I'd been somewhere else. And that's the only time in my life where I've had lost time or just no recollection of being in the moment doing the job. And that's a job where your adrenaline is pumping, your heart rate is 160 beats a minute, and there's 50 other guys on track trying to kill you. And so
I have missing time on an ongoing and regular basis. I have to watch my videos to know what I said because I switch out alters so much.
Wow.
John, I think you should check your lap times at that point, because here's what I suspect. You wound up doing too many consecutive laps at precisely the same lap speed. So you triggered some energy thing and you brought some aliens in and you got scooped up.
Dude, I have no freaking idea.
If you start, wonder what happens if you start doing lap times precisely the same. If you could actually pull that off, what that would matter.
Other people in dire situations, firemen or whatever, during the moment, your life is hanging by whatever, report kind of the same thing, that they have an out of body or, whatever's going on, your higher self is manipulating you, or, in Penny's case, the angels are, dragging you back to do your job or whatever it is.
Yeah, well, that amazed me because I'm a functional atheist. I have met ETs who are the gods here, but
who knows what
not,
angels are?
Yeah, who knows what they are?
Beings, 12th dimensional beings. Could be some friends of yours in the 12th dimension.
I know if I had the capacity to walk into somebody's world and I could read their mind, I would try to identify with what in their mind seems to be the most positive thing they could imagine.
Wow.
Yeah, I can see them doing that, but
doesn't mean
I've always been afraid of angels. I grew up reading the Old Testament. Come on,
right?
Angels are God's hitmen. They're not fluffy, friendly things.
Well, I truly believe those are, Alex Collier tells a story from the Andromedan perspective, and they say that human beings now, most souls on planet Earth, were once 11th density, and we've come down the chain to incarnate in 3rd density to experience, pure hell in the universe. The Earth is said to be the darkest place in the universe, and right now, and that's not good. So I think that's
my people tell me that Earth was supposed to be a nursery for baby souls. Yeah. And that was why there was a soul trap around it, was because they were to be kept in the playpen until they learned how to play nice. And that the rest of the galaxy figured out they could trap their criminals here and their dissidents and their dissidents and their people that they didn't like, and the people that got in the way of the emperor and those kind of folks. And so all of those guys got dumped here too. And Soul Trap is set up where if you reach 52% service to others, you can leave.
I think that applies to Eric and I. I think definitely we're in the criminal class. We're edging our way up to that 51% mark, but it's going to be close, man.
You know something I would not doubt if I was sent here by some other off-world faction to come bust this place open. I would not be.
I totally see that with me. They're like, "Oh, this guy's such a pain in the ass. Send him to Earth. Let them deal with him." You know, and by all accounts, my friends is, "Oh God, Warner, you know, I can only take him in, you know, short spurts." You know,
So we're like the colonial Australia of the cosmos.
exactly. Botany Bay. Remember your Star Trek? You know, the USS Botany Bay.
Oh, I don't remember that one.
Wrath of Khan.
I remember
Oh.
that one, yes.
The genetic supermen. Wink, wink. Gene Roddenberry knew something in the 60s. Those writers of the original Star Trek, you know, they were involved in the U.S. Navy with Admiral Leslie Stevens Jr. because his son, Leslie Stevens Jr., was a co-producer with Gene Roddenberry.
Mhm.
He also did Battlestar Galactica. And so
You want to know who the main players in Star Trek are?
oh no, I'm a real fan. You're gonna blow my universe up.
Oh,
I'm gonna
okay.
cry. I'm gonna cry if you tell me that.
Then
Who?
I won't.
Just get one. Captain Kirk.
Oh no, it's the factions.
Oh, the faction, the Klingons of the Draco, obviously.
The Klingons are the Draco.
Romulans are the Anunnaki.
The Vulcans are the SS in the German faction. The Romulans are the German regular guys. The Ferengi is the military-industrial complex in space. Solar Warden is the Federation.
Well, I'm going to have to disagree with you on this point. I can't see the Vulcans being peaceful in logic. That doesn't seem to represent the SS in my book. But, you know,
the SS in space is not the same as the SS on Earth.
it's Schwarz's son.
It's not the same because the initiation is you drink black goo, which is an AI. So you become AI.
I don't want that.
Which is pure logic, no emotions.
Ah, that's true. You're right. That part is
Very
consistent.
Vulcan-like.
Yeah.
You also have extra strength, very Vulcan-like.
Ooh.
You don't get sick because the AI keeps you healthy.
Interesting.
And you have a longer lifespan.
Yeah. Well, you got me there. You really do have me there. That's remarkable.
And it triples your IQ
And it makes your hands go into weird shapes.
Yeah, I don't think Eric and I got any black goo. I think I was rated at a 48 IQ in school.
Oh, geez.
A 48?
No, I don't know.
That was
Not a 148? I would believe it with a 1 in front of it.
All logic, all imagination.
I would believe it with a 1 in front of it.
Well, that's kind words, Penny. But you're not convincing the public who's watching this video.
I've been reading your book.
It's a little crazy. Half my friends read it and they were like, I didn't finish it. You lost me. You know, you lost me at the Anunnaki part or whatever I wrote, you know, about.
Well, I'm to the part where Frederick Anton Porsche is born.
Yeah, the book is named after Ferdinand Porsche's older brother who did die in the tin works. That's a true story. And he names a piece of machinery that the Germans, the high command, allows him. He helps create I'm not going to spoil it for you. A piece of machinery. He's allowed to call it Kleiner Anton, Little Anton.
So you know exactly how far now, right? So I've seen Miss Mercedes' dress. And
oh yeah, that's true story. There's a lot of true stories in that.
So far it reads like it's 95% true stories.
Yeah, a lot of it's true. I mean, I do take liberties because there's a lot of technical books on Porsche, but very, very little on his family life. I know there were pacifists. I know he liked mushroom soup with his wife and little things, the dogs of the family. He used to hunt stag with his brother. You know, little things like that. I've had to go to Germany and dig that out of distant relatives because the history books don't say anything about that. It's all, you know, he created this gearbox, you know, planetary gearbox. And they don't say anything about what kind of a family man he was. He hated war. His idea, though flawed, was that, you know, in World War I, he was creating, you know, better aircraft engines for the German Air Force, Luftwaffe, so that the war would be over quicker.
That,
something in World War II.
actually makes sense.
It does, but didn't really turn out that way. But in World War II,
logical things rarely turn out to be true, but they're still logical.
Right.
The best
and he was a man of law. He wasn't in cult, but he was an SS member. He was forced to become SS. All the industrialists had to join the Nazi party. I guess that's the SS, but I know he had an SS death's head ring, and I know he hated it. He kept it in his drawer and only brought it out when he had to wear it. He played the game. And in World War II, what are you going to do? Deny your young countrymen and your Austrians the best equipment? No way. You know, he's a very gray area character. That's why I like to write about him.
Gray area characters make good stories.
Yeah, it's all gray. Unfortunately, my experience with people is they want easy black and white answers. And those really don't exist in our reality.
I agree. There are no black and whites. And one thing about I learned in space that I found applies on Earth. Everybody thinks they're the good guys.
That makes sense, because I'd like to think I'm the good guy or a good guy.
That is
there's so many factions in the U.S. military alone, compartments. Who's a black hat, who's a white hat, who's a gray hat? I think they're all gray. It's just a dark gray or lighter gray. You know,
they all have justifications in their own minds for what they're doing.
Yeah.
I'm sure every
single
drone strike operator that we have, every 19-year-old drone operator that's wearing fatigues has probably been told some horrible story about the target that they're going to rain hell down on.
Oh yeah, that's military 101.
I mean, seriously, yeah, it's just like crazy, like as if that story is always going to match.
But those drone pilots have a higher stress rate and PTSD rate than foot soldiers.
Yeah,
because they watch these same individuals over weeks before they target them.
It's true. When I host twice a year, I host wounded veterans at my farm for a deer hunt. That's by their request. They want to hunt deer with black powder, you know, old-fashioned rifles and flintlocks. And so we did have a drone pilot once, and he was also blown up in a Humvee. Most of these guys and gals have horrible shrapnel all through them. They're in chronic pain and you know, head injuries. It's you know, and they're in tank track wheelchairs, things like that. But I remember we had a drone pilot, and he was I knew that it was stressful. They had shown that in a movie somewhere, and how psychologically stressful that was. And he said he just couldn't take it anymore.
Yeah.
And then, and of course, he joined his unit, and of course, a Humvee got it blown up. And that's what most of these guys, their wounds come from, you know, IEDs in Iraq and Afghanistan. It's very sad. I've learned a lot from those guys. We have some girls too. We had 2 girls come.
I think as a species, humanity, we need to, and I know this might sound really odd, but there is a method to my madness. Close quarters combat is morally correct. To be further than arm's length is immoral. Because in a way, you're now, if you're not willing to go to war, if I have a problem with John, and I want to fight him to the death over it, then the moral thing to do is to step up to him and with a hatchet or something and lop his head off. But
you're not going to get near me, pal. I've got an M4 carbine with 30 round clip.
That's immoral if you're going to do it from far away, because now you're doing it at distance and you're removing yourself from the right way of getting your opinion out there to the world, right? Interacting with your environment. It's immoral to kill people at distance. Now, think about how many people are now dead because you don't have to get involved. You don't have to deal with the trauma You can do it at distance.
Yeah.
So it
To me,
causes more war.
Yeah. To me, as a military historian, and Penny can speak to this, is that sounds like an Anunnaki Draco programming, honor.
Which one? Well, I'm not saying forget programming, just to assess it yourself, not from another person's perspective. Think about the morality.
All warfare is not natural for human beings. I think we're peaceful and loving. That's why
we went from kings that would lead the people into war, right? So this is now a person who has an opinion about killing other people, and he doesn't go from behind or lob bombs. He gets right in there because morally it's correct. Forget honor and other factions and orders. It's as an individual. It's very immoral for me to throw a rock from across a field and you don't see me do it, and I kill you and I go, I won the war with John Warner.
Easily done. But
I get that, but it's immoral. That's all my point is. I'm not saying it's not doable.
I can't speak to morality. I'm not even sure what that is.
I can.
But I know that when the fighting lulls, there are many stories out there. You can dig them up. There's hundreds of stories where, on the Western Front in World War I, the Germans and the British started playing soccer. Mm-hmm. And in World War II at the Battle of the Bulge, an American patrol got lost in the snow. A German patrol got lost in the snow, and they had Christmas at a little Belgian farmhouse.
Yeah, those are.
The owner of the farmhouse made them all sing and, whatever.
Yeah, and just as much as I can assess a positive moment,
that's who human beings really are. Yeah, human beings are really creatures of love, kindness, and empathy.
Exactly.
We've been forced to be warriors. I have my dark warrior side. But my wife asked me one time, she's like, "Do you ever been in a fight?" Because I was a rugby player in college, and I thought about it, and I said, "No, I've never actually been in a fight. I've always."
I have.
Yeah. And I was really surprised.
On Earth.
I hear that too.
Yeah, I was really surprised. As I've got this crazy warrior side of me, and I was like, my God, I've never been in a fight. I've always stood up to someone and backed them down or talked my way out of it.
I talk my way out of it now.
Yeah.
But in childhood, I was small for my age until junior high. And I grew up in a Christian cult that was very backwards. And I was made fun of a lot. And we moved a lot. And so it was this constant fight to be treated as a human being. And in fifth, sixth, and seventh grades, I fought a lot. And once I got past that stage, I've been talking my way out of it since. It was like something clicked and the violent side subsided.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Eric and I were going to talk about the subject of lucid dreams. And I tell my wife I have wild dreams. And sometimes they're full color and lucid and things like that. And I fight people. I'm a soldier in many eras. I've been a Civil War. The other night I was fighting the American Revolution. I have a Pennsylvania long rifle, like a backwoods Virginian under Morgan. And I was firing at the British and somebody grabbed me and said, "You idiot, behind this house." And I woke up. But in rare cases, I have to shoot someone. But I always try to, I wake up and I said, my God, I talked my way out of that. How did I do that? But I'll tell you a true story. I had a lucid dream, and they're very quick. I'm not saying I was a super soldier or anything special. I don't think I was. But I had a dream one night where I'm on a horizontal line underwater. And I have a commercial diver's license when I was younger. And I was in a dry suit with a helmet with communications and a dry bag that was vacuum sealed. No air in it. It was vacuum sealed with weapons, probably an M14, which I have at home. I wasn't really me. I was young, but I wasn't really me. I was so psyched to do the job and so proud to be there in that moment And when my wife woke me up because I was talking in my sleep, I was like, why did you do that? You know, I had a job to do. I was really angry. And then she's like, what is going on? And I was like, oh, sorry. You know, it was this weird dream. But it was the water was green. It wasn't the Caribbean or anything like that. That was very strange. I have a really fantastic imagination. That's why I write. But those kinds of dreams are very interesting. I'd like you to allow me to say one more, Eric.
Go for it.
This is about a year ago. I had a very strange, lucid, full color, in the moment dream. I'm in a white lab with black rectangular windows, and I'm in a gown. And there's these doctors with sunglasses on, and they're doing, I don't know, they're giving me shots and they're doing this, and I'm high as a kite. You know, I don't know, opium, laudanum, I have no idea. High as a kite, and I'm banging on the windows going, I want to see the earth. I want to see the earth. And they're like, it's there, you just can't see it. You know, I said, I want to go back to the moon. And I was, you know, they were trying to hold me down and do something. I was like, no, this is amazing. This is amazing. I kept banging on those black windows. And my wife woke me up again. And she's like, what are you talking in your sleep again for? I was like, oh, why did you do that? I needed to do something. It was always an urgency. Like I needed to get something done. And I've had other dreams where I'm like doing paperwork. They're like, you want to be a writer here? And I have stacks of paperwork and I'm just doing it like a civil servant, but I'm in a uniform. It's very strange.
What does the uniform look like?
If I had to guess, it was short sleeves with creases, you know, like a military, you know, maybe Air Force, like 1960s, you had the plastic badge. Remember how they used to carve those badges in the 60s, in the 70s with your name on it?
It was black, and they would carve it, and there'd be white letters remaining.
Right, it was an older computer, and they just kept files and files and files on my deck, and they're like, you're really behind. And I was really anxious, you know, I'm going to get it done. I'm going to get it done. I'll stay up all night and drink coffee and I'll get it done. There's always an urgency in these bizarre dreams of, I got to get this job done. I've got to do a good job.
Then you know you weren't in the military in the dream, because in the military, the guy would just kick his shoes up and be like, what are you going to do? Fire me?
I don't know. That's all I can tell you. I don't know if it's just my imagination or whether, you know, I was doing something in the astral world. I just don't know. But I don't claim to be anyone special like Penny or, you know, or Niara Osley.
Hey, I'm not special. I'm just somebody that's screaming they're kidnapping kids and it needs to stop.
Well, I think we're in agreement with you on that as a given, you know. I mean, that's why I'm here. You know, my wife and I discussed my coming forward. And I said, I do not want to come out to any of the big wigs like Greer or anybody else like that. I want to be involved with something grassroots. And she said, well, find the end of the rail line. Find the people. Remember the land of broken toys?
Mm-hmm.
The Rudolph cartoon. You know, I'm the abominable snowman. She's like, find the land of broken toys. What does this disclosure movement give the shortest shrift? I said, well, that seems to be the super soldier people coming out, but I have nothing in common with them. And she's like, you know, find someone in that community with a sense of humor like you, and you'll have somebody.
Eric.
Right.
I could laugh in hell.
Yeah, and so can I. I mean, it's just, we have the gift of humor, and it's, I mean, I'm not going to make jokes about children being slaughtered. I mean, that's disgusting.
Yeah.
But
I'm going
I can make light of anything else. You know, I can make fun of the deep state all day long. I mean, they're douchebags and idiots.
I'm keying in on the differences here, because the story that you had just said recently, I mean, it is such a distinct difference, right? You literally were saying that you've never been in a fight in your life.
No, it's hearing me. I was like, wait a minute. You know, I was in a fraternity, didn't I have a fight with those guys? And I was like, my God, I talked 10 people out of a brawl. I don't even, like, I feel weird saying it. I'm not doing it like a woe is me angle at all. I'm just doing it because it's true. I want to make this statement, right? The amount of violence that I was exposed to is off the wall compared to what I hear from other people. And I'm not even saying, I'm not trying to say like I got beat by my parents. Like
I would get hit by my parents as a disciplinary thing. It would happen. I'm not saying it didn't happen, but I'm not saying my parents were running around beating me either. But aside from that physical activity, I would get very regularly disciplined at school, and I'll use the term more loosely. At the Catholic school was less disciplinary and more of a beating. So that would happen too. Additionally, every single kid in my neighborhood, for all practical purposes, you would fight in a sparring capacity almost constantly, to the point of it always would turn real, because everything would always start out as sparring, and next thing you know, people have bloody noses. That was all of youth and every single one of my friends my entire life. And then as we grew up, it got into full-blown like street combat with gangs and stuff like that. I've never been shot or stabbed, but I've been in every type of street conflict up to and including knife fights and guns. I was just unarmed.
Yeah,
I've been beaten up so many times. I'm not trying to say I'm a tough guy. I've won a few fights in my life. The vast majority of the time was me getting mauled by crowds of people. Like you show up you turn the wrong corner. There's 5 of you and 50 of them. Well, guess what? Do your best.
yeah, I never had a fair odds ever.
Oh, very rarely did I have fair odds.
3 girls, and there'd be like 10 guys on the street, and I'd have to go up to them. You know, I mean, the girl I was dating was completely drunk out of her mind, and I think we were in Brooklyn back in the 80s, and
yeah,
threw a beer bottle at these these Hispanic guys, and man, they came out with the switchblades and the shit, and I just went up to them and I said, hey man, I'm sorry, she's loco, and she really was loco. With a lot of booze in her, and somehow I talked those guys out of it. And the other girl was holding her, and she was screaming, I'm gonna kill you, and I'm like, I'm sorry, she's nuts. But there's 12 guys and just little old me.
Oh, totally understood.
I never ever got fair odds in a fight. But this, whatever.
I would get lucky sometimes, and I could talk people down. One-on-one fights. If one person started with me, I would talk them down. I could talk one person down from fighting me all day long.
I never backed away.
Oh, correct. Yeah, there's no, but I don't want to fight anybody. But if they're going to bring it to me,
it's like,
I attempt to de-escalate.
not my thing.
Once I got the fighting out of me by 7th grade, I can go anywhere, any neighborhood, any part of the country, and have no problem whatsoever.
Yeah, I'm not afraid to go places. I like people.
I lived in the part of Fresno that the police had abandoned. I lived there for 6 years. While I was there, the mafia came in and took over the place. They do a better job than the police do, by the way.
I believe it.
And the bankers. I would rather have money owed to an old school loan shark than a credit card company today. The loan sharks only charged you 10%. What do credit cards get nowadays?
Oh, let me hook you up with Mellon Bank in Pittsburgh. We'll cut you a good deal. How about that?
I'm sure they charge more than 10% on their credit lines.
I get a kickback.
Is this John's affiliate link?
No, I have no.
Go down underneath to mellinvestments.com.
No, I don't. All the banks are in cahoots with each other. They're all corrupt.
Yeah. Most of the folks in your league that I interact with these days are people who have been remembering duty in space. And that's a bit of a trip when you have someone come to me and say, oh, my mom works for such and such bank, such and such office, and I remember being in space with you, and I have these issues, and so they want me to do counseling with them. And I end up with 30, 40 of these people. And I'm like, okay, somebody is spreading the word around that I don't hold it against them that they're related to bankers. So it's okay. We all have weird relatives.
How about this, Penny? Why don't we do a quick therapy session right now? Give me some therapy. Eric won't return my phone calls. It's not that I'm stalking him. It's just I don't understand. I feel unrequited.
Yeah, I have that problem sometimes with Eric too, but it's okay. He actually, he goes out in the woods in deep snow, and he's out there with his dog, and he's having a blast, and he just doesn't answer the phone.
You're right. I think it's jealousy on my part because I love the snow and it's not snowing enough here. It's just cold and rainy.
The funny
It
thing
has. It snowed once here, and we got a hole this much, maybe an inch and a half. And where I live, it's 1,400 foot elevation. So we expect to get that much snow every year. We haven't had any since, what was it, 2016, something like that. So we finally get snow, and by morning it's gone. And I'm like,
you know what it is? It's that Sonora vortex out there. It's shifting weather patterns to the north, to Alaska. And
no, it shifts it to the county north of us. It does on a regular basis. We can see the snow clouds to the north and go, shit, it missed us again. So
well, I apologize.
The neighbors are going, we don't want snow. And I go, but.
Yeah, it's so beautiful.
And then when it does snow, they're out there throwing snowballs. They enjoy it. They're just being mean to me.
Snow makes everyone a kid again.
It does.
That's why Eric lives in Alaska. He's got constant snow.
I get fresh snow to go break trail on.
No, he didn't have snow last summer when we were there.
Really?
No, but he had the most luscious lawn I've ever seen.
Well, he's got a great backwoods vista.
Yeah, he does. There's a creek at the bottom of it.
I think we should call the sheriff on him. I think he's got it too plush out there.
There's no sheriffs in Alaska.
No.
I wish we had them. We'd be better off if we had them. We don't have them.
Really?
State police?
We have state police, but that's different than sheriffs.
Oh, I'm well familiar.
Yeah.
Peter Scofflaw, I am.
Yeah.
We have sheriffs here, and we also have militia, but they're not the same as his militia. One of them's Christian and the other one's Satanist, and the sheriff's department leaves both of them alone.
Yeah,
we also have 2 tribal reservations, and the sheriff's department leaves them alone too. In fact, the larger one of the reservations is actually contracted to do the policing on the town next door to their reservation.
Nice.
So we do have occasional cowboy and Indian incidences at the casino.
Yeah.
Usually on Friday nights after they get paid.
Well, you get them Western boys mixed up, there's always going to be a gunfight.
I live in hillbilly territory. Come on. It may be California, but we're still hillbillies.
Oh, my farm in Virginia is, there's the guys across a river, they have a range for machine guns. And so there's automatic weapons fire coming up from the Shenandoah River over the hill to my house. My wife and I are sitting out there having a cocktail, having a fire. And I'm like, it's really nice. It's like being in Vietnam or Iraq or Afghanistan. She's like, yeah.
We don't have that. My partner, Lou, did time in Nam, in Cambodia, and Laos, and Thailand. And he was not American military. He was a contract worker. And he ended up with a piece of shrapnel in his back. And he has some flashbacks sometimes. And because we have a telepathic connection, I have seen his still classified flashbacks. And I asked him one day, I described what I had seen in his flashback, and he told me where it was. And I got real cocky, and The NSA team that activated my memories, God only knows why. The major from that unit was giving me a hard time one day, and I said, how about you check into such and such? And he came back to me and he says, that's above my level of clearance. How do you know about it? And I said, telepathic flashbacks. And he goes, shit. And I go, you reactivated me. You deal with the blowback. He goes, all right. So he says, what's the code name of the person you're sharing flashbacks with? And I gave it to him, and he comes back a month later and he says, there is no record of that person. And I go, good. So this is the kind of life I live.
That's remarkable.
Nobody knows nothing. But yet I'm getting flashbacks of things that are still classified from Vietnam.
Yeah, there's a lot of strange things that happened in Vietnam. My uncle was in the American Information Service in Laos. CIA,
Yeah.
Air America stuff. And he never told me anything specific, but he said it was just horrifying, the things they had to deal with. And I have another acquaintance on my history forum, and we've chatted back and forth. And he said, I lost a lot of guys in my Army recon team. And I said, I'm so sorry for that. And he's like, no, you don't understand. They're just missing. They went into the deal here and they're gone. And I think the three of us understand the MIA and when the war in Syria, 150,000 people just disappear, they're going out there.
Well, my understanding is that there are 100,000 human beings from Earth every year who are converted into cyborgs and sold to ETs for advanced technology. But that the galactic government has forbidden anyone to give us anything they consider useful. So we are basically selling our own brothers and sisters for what the galaxy considers to be toys. The equivalent of the purchase of Manhattan Island for $28 of glass beads.
Yeah, and this gets back to the point that we're also the only species that kills each other.
Yeah, we kill each other, we sell each other, slavery is the biggest moneymaker on this planet and has been since there have been humans. And I don't think we created it, but I don't think at this point we can imagine life actually without it, without pecking order slavery, as in a hierarchical system where there are winners at the top and massive losers at the bottom.
That's kind of
we cannot even imagine being in a social structure that's different.
That's kind of the direction that I was going to try to go to with the logic of the immorality of war, is that I also feel that it's like an outside force that incites us to war and to these machinations of war in the industry of being able to lob bombs from further. That these were all ideas that were put into us by others because it wouldn't have come from us, because in true conflict, hand-to-hand combat, the first thing that you learn is you don't want to do that again.
Yeah.
That's what happens. That's what the veterans of close quarters combat come back from with war stories. They'll say, we will never do that again. There's no reason to ever do that again. That's what people learned way back when we fought morally. So wars became few and far between. Now that we have this immoral aspect where we can so easily kill each other, where did these ideas come from? That's not right, because it did not come from our brothers.
Yeah, we were definitely manipulated into doing all that.
Right.
And,
Well, look at history. We have history as mythology. Look at all of the demigods in history. If you take the name demigod and substitute the word super soldier, the descriptions match.
yeah.
They're oversized, they're over aggressive, they are smarter than your average bear, but they have periods of insanity where they kill their families. If they're able to have a family, because many of them are sterile, they have long bouts of insanity. They have abilities that normals don't. They're able to do these outrageous tasks. I mean, just take a look at Theseus, Perseus, Hercules, Gilgamesh, all of them. And this goes back 5,000 years. Who are using these demigods as super soldiers? It certainly wasn't humans at that point.
Oh, I think Atlantis did with the sons of Belial. You know,
I think the only real difference between now and then is that now it's humans doing it to each other, and then it was the others doing it to us.
I think it was Michael Zarian who pointed out that the children of the Law of One, which is one faction of Atlantis Empire, and the sons of Belial, which had gone, you know, Nazi dark. And of course, there were chimeras and hybridizations and things for slave pets like centaurs and other bull-headed, you know, people. And somehow that turned into a cosmic war.
The bull-headed people are actually from Taurus.
Yeah, the dog-headed cynophale, they're from Sirius, I think, the dog star.
Some are, most are from Canis Minora.
Yeah, that's right. That does ring a bell. It's interesting. I mean, our history, the legends are all, it's all mixed up. But it's certainly, we've seemed to be fighting a lot of wars, especially the last 15,000 years.
And we're fighting a lot of wars in space, most of which we have absolutely no business being involved in.
Well, on Earth either.
I'd be interested to see if there's like if somebody has calculated annually global annual deaths due to war. By war's definition,
Well,
say like if we were just.
I saw a list that the 20th century had 250 million people who were killed by their own governments.
I guess that might be the better way to look at it too, is by governments through either war or destruction of their own nation, because that's also coming to play too with massive deaths where the government itself is almost committing war against its own people.
Yeah.
That was a 100-year period. 250 million people were killed by their own governments. And yet we're supposed to trust our government to take care of us.
We should probably just give up all of our guns.
Ladies and gentlemen, don't trust anyone.
Yeah, well,
In authority.
I kind of have trust issues anyway. Being kidnapped multiple times a night for 20, 40, 60 years at a whack, and have no control over how many times I've taken, where I'm taken, or what I'm expected to do while I'm gone, or the shape that I'm returned in. I've been returned from successful missions, damaged, broken ankles, shoulders that required surgery, spinal issues. I've had periods of paralysis because of injuries on the way back from successful missions. So these are not nice people who are coming to get me.
Penny, I wanted to ask you a question related to that. And this has to do with after our previous lives are over and we want to incarnate again. Do you believe that we have a choice? Some people say, we choose the people in our lives, we choose everything in it, everything that happens? Or do you think we're swindled in that?
I think some people are swindled. I thought that I was being dumped into a situation in this life. And one of the beings guiding me let me see my past life self reading the contract for this incarnation. And it was the size of a college physics book. It was fucking huge. And I was a man past life, and I could see him sitting there reading this thing. He gets to the end and pulls off his glasses, and he says, "It's impossible. I will be crazy by the end. It's absolutely necessary. Better me who knows the lay of the land than someone new." And he signed it. And if I ever get to meet him, I'm going to kick his ass.
It's interesting. I've heard some people like Alex Collier say that only the toughest souls in the universe incarnate here. This is not a popular place to incarnate for, fun or something. There are those who want to experience this darkness and to help, raise the vibration and anchor the light on Mother Earth, as quote unquote. That seems to be the case. Because when I look at my crazy life and all the stuff I've done, it's like, that sounds like me to agree to. Yeah, I check those boxes. It's like you go in a new car dealership and I want the racing tires, I want the headers, and I want this. And it's like, why did you do that? Well, at the time, it seemed like a good idea. And a valid experience, as if you want to sit on a porch in Nebraska and watch the sunsets and drink whiskey, that's a valid experience. But if you want to get in the trenches and deal with, everything that we're discussing today, that's valid too. It's whatever you want to do. But as long as you're here, your job is to help everyone, raise that positive side, because we're way off to the negative. I think we can all agree on that. I mean, it's been that way for 12,000 years.
My understanding of my particular mission is that I'm supposed to be exposing crap with the intention of it being stopped, not exposing it just to make everybody upset, but to bring it to the attention of the public in such a way that it cannot be allowed to continue. Now, I was kidnapped when I was 4 years old. Last month, I was contacted by a family. Their 4-year-old son is refusing to sleep because he doesn't want to go into space again. So this shit is ongoing.
Wow.
That's my mission, to stop this from happening to other kids.
Well, I can't speak for Eric, but I'll certainly join you in that, whatever I can do. I do my own little tiny part. Awareness is really all we can do on as far as I'm concerned. Other people can do other things, but awareness, but there's no red pilling anyone on any of this.
No.
People that are 80% awake, but they refuse to look at the dark, the end of the rail line. They don't want to hear about the Draco. They don't want to hear about, anything bad. They don't want to hear about pedophilia or the kids. They just want to know about the, Star Wars or the crystal,
Phase
stuff.
I get
meditation. Yeah.
To be honest, I get really frustrated with the people who are all into all of the spaceships and the technology and the this and the that and the fun stuff.
Yeah, the
Because
hardware.
that's not what it is. What it is they're kidnapping children and they're keeping us as slave labor for the rest of our lives. The Germans in space have told me And they thought this was to reassure me. But they said, if we ever find out that you have died, we will time travel and get you just before you die, and we will take you to Mars and put you in a regen tank, and you will never be allowed to die as long as your body will still do regeneration. We're talking perpetual slavery. Because what I do is out there is normally done by an ET. So I'm replacing an ET on a ship. Actually, the last few that I've gone on, I'm replacing an ET for the entire armada.
And lest we forget, all possibility existing always, since consciousness can also be transferred, your body in this equation is also not really part of the equation. So when you're talking about perpetual slavery, the body is not a limit. Okay,
Yeah.
so for all practical purposes, maybe my body failed my master in my previous life, and my consciousness was inserted into this body, at which point it had already been an enslaved consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And at the whim of whoever is the master of that. Which, good luck in this world finding the truth on how that energy exchange works, because as John knows, the history books are a little bit skewed.
The history books are lies and propaganda and more lies.
Right. So where do I even begin to go to study the energy postulation that I just had in contemporary literature? Where's that at?
Especially when most of that information would be hidden in religious texts, which all have an agenda of their own.
Yeah, I mean, they have little bits of truth and wisdom, but they're surrounded by a bodyguard of lies and disinformation. They're useless.
You read 1,000 pages and you might get 3 sentences of truth out of it.
People who, we've got a planet that's highly religious in one religion or another. And, I believe in religious freedom because I believe in free will, but I don't care for it. It's all created by the Anunnaki and others, regressives. It's a control system that works incredibly well, and it keeps people from getting out of their bubble because it's like, well, God will take care of us, and as long as I get down on my knees and pray, and it's like
it also keeps us divided and hating each other.
Yeah, religions have been the cause of countless wars on Earth for as long as I can imagine. Countless wars. What's up with that? And nobody wants to see that. They're like, well, God works in mysterious ways. I had a girlfriend once who was a beautiful girl, but she always said, I asked her a hard question. She'd cup her hands and say, we're all seeds in God's hands. I said, well, I was asking you about, a submarine. We're all seeds in God's hands. Well, what about this?
That means I don't know, I don't care, and I'm not going to look into it.
It's a conversation ender. It's like I went to religious school. Eric and I were tortured with that. And I had a teacher who was highly religious. And I said, I was probably 11 or 12. And I said, I don't get it. Well, why are all these religious wars? And he said, don't worry about that. God will sort that all out. You don't need to worry about that. And I said, well, what if I grow up and I have to fight in a war? I really did. I grew up in the Vietnam era. And you and I are close in age, Penny. And my dad fought that war in our living room with the TV. My mom and dad screamed at each other. And so there was, for us little kids, it was kind of like having a war. And, but religion is always that pablum, that excuse, that balm. Oh, you're unhappy. God will say, stroke your rosary beads and God will take care of you. And it's like, when you really know the truth of the world, I woke up at 10 years old and I refused to pray, refused to go, they made me go to chapel. I couldn't do that. But I refused to sing those stupid, boring hymns. It was mostly so boring. I realized that my young self, I knew that everything was bullshit that was boring to me. And of course, history and warfare wasn't. And that's why I studied all about the Germans and World War II and from there, everything. ancient history because that wasn't boring to me. Everything else, math, you know.
Vice-like logic from a
So I was
6-year-old mind.
What's that?
Vice-like logic from a 6-year-old mind. That everything that's boring's junk. I just know it.
By the way, private schools teach logic. Public schools stopped teaching logic during Reagan.
I feel like there was a lot of stuff that I was being taught that the public school kids weren't being taught.
Yeah.
Phonics, I thought was huge.
It's Lent. And as a former Episcopalian, it's one of the things I still half-ass practice. So last year for Lent, I did this thing that every day I posted something explaining occult stuff.
Did you make blancmange? Blancmange?
No.
The almond pudding? It's a Lent thing. That's all I know about Lent.
No, I do the Shrove Tuesday pancakes and sausage.
Well, ooh, I'll come over for that.
Yeah, I was Episcopalian. I mean, you know what they're like. I was a lay reader. So when I went to seminary. But yeah, so this year I'm listening to all this blatant bullshit surrounding me. And so I'm doing something really asking for trouble. I've gotten some PDF books that are textbooks on logic.
Ooh.
And I'm going to be teaching a basic logic course.
How very Vulcan of you.
It's
That's good. But don't you need imagination and emotion?
They have all that. You should see these people. They have imagination. They have emotion. They have no logic whatsoever. And they should be in balance.
I can agree with that. I feel like a lot of people nowadays, a lot of people have imagination and creativity now coming out their ears, right? But logic and a discerning mind, like where did that go? People have no discernment anymore. They have a smartphone. They don't.
Well, that's part of Hermetic law, is the law of discernment.
Yeah. If you don't understand logic, you cannot think critically. And then you become a slave because you are a slave to whoever does your thinking for you.
Yeah, it used to be that somebody would put like an idea out in the room and somebody would respond with like, you used to hear this. They would go, let me think about that. And then they would think about it and the other person would wait. And then the other person who was thinking would come back and say, now that I thought about it, and they would apply their intelligence. That exchange doesn't occur anymore. You hit something with someone they don't know and they grab their smartphone out because the smartphone's smarter than them. And they try to get educated, but they're just regurgitating somebody else's education.
Well, we're taught to
regurgitate. Or worse, they come up with, I think, and proceed to give you their opinion, completely unfounded in fact, or they go, well, I don't resonate with that, or I feel, and you never get anything even related to what the original statement was.
Well, that's also a counterintelligence tactic.
Yeah, exactly.
Move the conversation sideways.
If I know that,
start talking in circles, and all of a sudden everyone's forgotten the question.
If I know that 2 + 2 is 4 and I present that to somebody else, I don't need them to confirm my position. If they're unaware that 2 + 2 is 4, they don't have to resonate with it. They can be wrong all day long. I love when people do stuff like that. It makes me laugh. They're like, I don't feel like you're right. You don't have to feel like I'm right for me to be right.
Eric, you need to have Luis Elizondo on your show. That guy,
that person, I could picture the face.
Yeah, he's Chris Mellon's buddy. He's the counterintelligence guy.
Okay.
When he's asked direct questions, that guy can spin you in circles like nobody else.
Oh my God, I hate dealing with that.
Yeah, then I just go back to my original question. I've dealt with very.
He won't answer any of your questions, but he'll talk a lot. He says little, but talks a lot. You know, and Chris Millen's kind of like that too. You know, these guys are trained.
They are.
Well, Senator, I'm sorry, I'd have to use the analogy of Little Red Riding Hood and the mean dragons, and you know, and it's like, and then a half an hour later, nobody remembers.
That sounds like my Facebook wall.
I was a specialist in what I did.
So I'm going to be teaching a class on basic logic.
Common sense.
And I'm going to collect it all into a PDF file and sell it for $5.
All right.
Nice. Excellent.
Do you want some additions by me on how to sniff through bullshit?
Yes.
Oh, that sounds fantastic.
Yeah, I went through all my dad's bullshit. Well, son, you know, national security, you know, they were baking muffins that day and the submarine had to go through the ice.
Appendix A with John Warren's BS detector.
Yeah. Even as a kid, they slapped me silly. I was punished and beaten for it. Don't talk back to your, you know, and I was like, but you have a gun.
Oh, God.
Why do you have a gun at school under your seat? Shut up. You know, they would always, you know, anyone who uses violence to counteract your logic, you know something's suspicious there.
I used to get beaten regularly. My father was one of those, you did not talk back. You did not challenge his statements. And I would just sit there and go, why? Simple question, one word. Why?
I used to have to go as one of the plumbing contractors that I worked for on the North Shore of Long Island in these affluent homes where everybody was wordy-gurdy and trained to evade questions. You'd be surprised the skill set required to go get final payment on a $250,000 bathroom. And the person just doesn't want to give you that final payment, but my skill set was to go get that check. No matter what comes out of their mouth or what sidestepping conversation they have, get the check.
Mm-hmm.
It's talent. It's hard. Not everybody can get in that house and hold that conversation with that person that doesn't want to give you the check and has a team of lawyers and a mansion and 12 Dobermans and everything under the sun to try to make you not get that check. Yeah,
I might defer to Eric on the bullshit meter. I think he would have seen more than that. We could definitely give Penny some additions, you know.
Oh yeah.
In there about, you know, how to sniff it out and, you know, keep asking the direct question and get it the shorter and shorter question until they cannot, you know, they just refuse to open their mouths, I think.
Yeah.
I've done that to people. Just keep down to the one word, why or how. Those two, just people go batshit.
Yeah, I mean it's amazing all the bullshit in our reality and where it all stems from and where these techniques have come from, and it's incredible.
And the neuro-linguistic programming.
That's interesting to me. That word keeps popping back up in my world as of recently. And it makes me laugh because there are certain words that when I hear them now, I go, oh, I haven't heard that since I was a little kid.
Yeah, there are people, I listen to them talk and they do this natural sounding monotone that kind of puts you to sleep, but at the same time you're awake enough to hear them and you're going, oh my God, this is hypnosis.
Yeah.
Yep. I've totally caught people.
Girlfriends like that, they would never stop talking and I'd go to sleep at the wheel. It's very dangerous, actually.
Yeah, it is. It's very dangerous.
And then Sally said,
yeah.
I've had a couple of clients that I suspected were in the act of attempting to hypnotize me. One I think may have pulled it off, but he was. You're
so irresistible, Eric. I'm telling you, you have this magnetism.
No, they were hypnotizing me. It never went the other way.
Okay. There's a lot of lonely women in those North Shore mansions. I know.
Or lonely men.
Companies that build buildings with large, deep foundations of concrete.
Ooh.
I was made an offer one time and I had to leave because I would have been killed. Her husband could disappear off the face of the earth in the blink of an eye, and I knew it. And I got the hell out of Dodge.
Ooh.
Yeah.
The statute of limitations are gone on that, right?
Yeah, there's no concern. Some lady hit on me back in the day.
Let me get to the FBI website here. Oh, you're in big trouble.
Put it this way. It's all fun and games. When the plumber shows up at the house, nobody's really hitting on the plumber. The plumber walks in, he's got a drain.
Oh, no. Come on. Are you out of your mind? The plumber is the fantasy of most people out there. According to some, stag films.
Yeah.
Seriously, yeah. The workmen, are you kidding? The movies, they always show. They show up at your house. They're buff. They're young. And
all right. So here's full disclosure. This is it. This is going to be the true full disclosure. John is right. And there's not a single house that I've ever gone in as a plumber where I haven't shagged the wife that was there.
I knew it. I knew it. Knew I should have been a plumber.
That's why I smile all the time.
With a wrench. Socket wrench, but yeah. No, that's a whole nother topic.
Truth be told, I was just a pimp for hire.
That's a whole nother topic, the topic of what's called sexual misery. And it's another one of these regressive imposed things. I mean, we have so much hang up with sex and disease and pregnancies and unwanted relationship and divorce. And there's this whole concept of how difficult it is to get along. I mean, I found my twin flame late in life. I was 51 really. And it's a miracle I found her at all. And she's with me, on all this stuff we're talking about.
Congratulations.
Remarkable.
That's a very, very rare thing to happen. Usually a twin flame pair will completely rub each other the wrong way.
We've never had an argument in 8.5 years. Never.
For some reason, I feel like I'm going to see something get thrown across the room at you right now just for fun.
Yeah, I never lose my temper with her, ever. I mean, she's just all love and light. It's incredible. And she's super smart. I mean, she's smarter than I am.
Lou and I have been together for 20 years. And I can tell you what will start a fight in under 2 minutes. It's easy. Just ask him to make a yes or no decision.
I hate it when women do that. Yes or no? Well, let me tell you the story.
It's I need to have a decision to make my plans.
I'm the same way, actually. I'm concise, quick, to the point. I see adjectives as like potential problems. Like, why are you giving me so many words? What are you up to? Yes or no?
I need to know to schedule my calendar. A simple yes or no, but it's like pulling teeth.
No, it's true. My wife tries to do that, and I'm like, what day? And the wheels are turning in my head so fast that to get them to stop, it's like a 2-mile long, locomotive train, trying to come to a stop to give her this yes or no answer. I'm like, who? What day? What are you talking about? And she literally has to repeat the whole thing over again before I can, if I'm writing and researching, because my mind is so far elsewhere. It's just like, next Tuesday. And then next Tuesday comes around, I'm like, what? We have to go out to dinner with those people? No way. I never said yes to that. And she's like, she makes me sign a piece of paper. Yes, you did. Oh, no.
Smart lady.
Yeah.
We have a calendar, an old school paper one, and Lou keeps it. So we write down interviews, and whether it's audio or visual, and we write down doctor's appointments, and we write down when bills have to be paid, and when we're going to a conference. And going to a conference is a big deal because I can only afford to go to one a year. And so it's like, okay, I talk to him and I say, well, I was asked to go to this on this and this date. Do you want to go? Should be a simple yes or no, especially since he's got to write it on the calendar.
Which begs the question, Penny, do you think those contact in the desert or UFO conferences, do you think they help?
No. But
that was a yes or no answer.
I have a following, and it gives them an opportunity to press the flesh.
Is it a positive experience?
I'm exhausted by the end of the 3 days, drained. I come home, I do cord cutting. But when I wasn't doing them, people showed up at my house.
It wasn't me, but it sounds like something I would have done.
So far they have all been nice people, but the thought of strangers showing up at my door got a little bit disturbing. So I do this thing once a year where they can go meet me somewhere else and I'm safe and they can spend time with me and ask their questions and they go away happy. It seems like a win-win to me.
Right.
What about you, Eric? Have you ever been to a conference?
No, I have not been to like any sort of an SSP or consciousness conference. I was invited to go to the one that Penny's going to next.
Next month.
To the producer on that one. There's still technically an open door, but I was hoping for the policies of the country to change. And since the tyranny is at the level that it is right now, I am not leaving the state of Alaska.
I'm always worried that deep state might take some action against a group that's come together. Not that I'm scared of that, you know. I'm not scared of anything.
Well,
I'm certainly
CIA agents show up.
Yeah, I know that.
I mean,
police officers show up.
I'd probably know someone. Hey,
it's in Vegas, so mafia show up and members of the family show up, and none of them have bothered me. They're there. I'm aware of them. I feel their aura, but I'm not.
Well, if it's a good outlet, I think that's what they call cognitive behavioral therapy. You know, it's just talking to groups of people. It can be very therapeutic.
Well, I go in, I give one presentation. I'm on one, maybe two panels. I'm there for 3 days, and I spend most of the time talking to small groups of people outside the building.
That's great.
And they are paying $500 a pop to have this opportunity. And that's just the entrance fee. So I think the prices are outrageous, but when the hotels are charging what they do, the first conference I went to, the hotel charged $35,000 for 5 days. To me, that seems $7,000 a day seems to be rather outrageous to me. Especially since that particular place was remodeling and had torn up the floors. So.
Now, Las Vegas is interesting. I'm just going to spin that off. I lived in Vegas. I used to race there, and I also lived there for 3 months. A friend, and I really got to know the town. If you get away from the Strip, you know, there's beautiful things around Vegas. You got Hoover Dam, you have Red Rock Canyon, which is my favorite, and I always felt very spiritual in Red Rock Canyon for some reason. I mean, it's just this amazing place. I think Las Vegas.
I vacationed there one year with SSP friends.
Yeah.
And we went to the little alien, and we went to Area 54 and interacted with tall whites and visited a place called Sekhmet's Temple. And I ended up sick after we stopped at the Groom Lake entrance to Area 51. We did not cross the line, but out of the 4 of us in the car, I was the one that got sick. They managed to find a toilet in time, but I spent probably an hour on it. And so, yeah.
Is Charles Hall's description of the tall whites, is that accurate?
Roughly, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they seem very arrogant and mean, mostly.
Tall whites are blue collar Anunnaki.
Yeah. You said that. I remember you saying that. That's very interesting. I never knew that.
And they're very telepathic. And it was interesting because we were talking based on information that I had from the Galactic Authority regarding their situation. And the conversation was telepathic, but I had to repeat it out loud for someone in our group that is not telepathic. 3 of us were, 1 was not. And it was one of those situations where by the end of the day, that person who is not telepathic was having a really, really hard time. And the other 2, not my partner and I, had gone there the day before, and they had a photo of a tall white ship. Basically the Tic Tac style. And you could see it in the distance, and it was on a dry lake. So it was really a fruitful experience for them. So one day they're listening to what sounds like birdsong around them, and they're getting photos of the ship. And the next day I'm there delivering a message, and they're like, what? 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 So, yeah. Sometimes I have to deliver messages. They're not always what people want to hear either. But you do the job.
What was the agreement that the U.S. Air Force had with them originally?
The original agreement was that they would have a base on the desert area because they prefer higher temperatures in exchange for advanced technologies.
Did they need a base because we're near a Stargate? Earth is near a Stargate?
They needed a base because their civilization is dying. Their home world is becoming uninhabitable. And they were actually engaging in a covert invasion. And that was what my message to them was you're busted.
Did you hear about the Pleasantville, California fires?
Yeah.
That the tall whites were starting to intermingle with people at the markets, and somebody said that we're not going to do that, and they torched the place. Do you think that story's true?
I'm pretty sure that the community was hit with the lasers that are mounted on, I believe it's Navy jets, because the fires that have gone through have all been in the regions that are earmarked to be no human habitation after Agenda 2030 is completed. So I don't know if it was related to ET inhabitants or not, but there had to be some reason they chose that particular area. Another thing is there is an old gold mine under that town. And the inhabitants there held title to that mine. And if they were dead or driven off the property, then it would revert to the US government. And it was shut down because gold prices were lower than the cost of mining, not because it was empty. A lot of gold mines in California were shut down because the price, the labor of mining was higher than the price of the gold.
Yeah.
So
I worked on a remote gold mine in Alaska, and of my own singular experience, I don't trust anything a gold mine owner says, because I was pulling gold ore out of the ground by the truckloads for a company that was saying they were going bankrupt. So when they talk about the cost of getting gold out of the ground and delivering it to the market, they're usually not discussing the truckloads of gold that they're screwing their shareholders out of.
of course not.
No.
Oh, we didn't get any gold. It's just too expensive to get this gold out of the ground. We just have gold that we're losing money on all day long. It's crazy. I love those stories.
My partner and I met, we were working at a limestone quarry in the area. I was the janitor housekeeper and he was the security guard. And the wash water, because they would wash the rock before they crushed it, the wash water went through a sluice box. Mm-hmm. And they were pulling out $1,500 worth of gold a day out of the sluice box.
Oh, yeah.
On top of what they were getting for the limestone and marble. So, and I knew this because I knew the guy that was taking the gold out of it.
Yep. Yeah, we were a small remote community where we were at, and I would call major shenanigans on what was going on. Even to date with what's going on at the facility
there's major shenanigans everywhere. Nothing is as it is reported.
People talk about the oldest industries in the world, right? And one of the things that they don't realize, everything on this planet, okay, just so everybody understands, like you can put your ideals wherever you want. But if you can't farm it, you know, if you can't basically grow it, you got to mine it. That's how this world works. Like a lot of people, they want mines shut down, but they don't actually understand how important they are or how long they've been prevalent in our society. Okay. Mining is a very undiscussed industry. It's all over the place, but people think of it as like there's a mine, maybe one, or like they don't think of how prevalent mining is.
I think we had mining before we had agriculture.
Oh, absolutely. And here's the other thing that people don't understand. Of all the languages of the world in antiquity and prevalence, mining's a language that covers the whole planet. It's the same wherever you go. If you're an old miner, you speak, there's an old mining tongue. So you can go in any country and be a miner. And there's a mining language. Most people don't know that.
You know, it's interesting you bring that up because one of the topics I've been working on for my history forum is very controversial. And I'm not the only one to have posed the question. There are others. I actually got it from somebody else, a very young person. And that is in places like, my wife and I went to Cusco to go to Machu Picchu in Peru. And along the way to Machu Picchu, the terraced hills, and there's also these, you know, Sacsayhuaman. If you look at Sacsayhuaman, I think I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, but it looks like, you know, a Neolithic, megalithic factory. You know, the zigzag walls with the giant megalithic stones that are, you know, 500 tons. And I'm thinking, wow, this is like a telluric energy, you know, processing plant with maybe a portal, because that's how you get goods back up and down. We use that today in the military.
Yeah.
And the steps. This gentleman proposed a theory that he looked at these steps and these strange constructions up there. And he says, I'll be damned, that looks like gold mining. And this gets back into Enki and the Anunnaki and Abzu in Africa and all that.
Weren't they here for gold?
Right. That they, you know, just because the Aztecs came along later and used them for religious purposes doesn't mean that construction, that megalithic construction, was built for that purpose. And I posed it to Brian Forster. He does a great job with going around the world filming all this stuff. And he jumped down my throat and said, you know, God damn you, you know, shut the hell up. And I said, whoa, you know, I just proposed the idea as a remote possibility. And, you know, these people, they get vested interest and they carve a groove for themselves and they can't get out of the groove. And I'm all about looking at things from every perspective. And this was a radical perspective proffered by this young man. I think he's like 25 or 6, and he has a channel called Mind Earth. And I'll be damned. And he looked at the kivas in the Four Corners area of, you know, Colorado and New Mexico, and looked at some of these kiva complexes. He said this could be a religious center for the, you know, Anasazi, or these could be holding tanks for the slurry from gold mining. And this poor guy got all this hate mail for it. You know, how dare you? You know, this is peaceful, spiritual people doing peaceful things, and how dare you? And it's like, no, he's like, that's fine. Later on, you know, later people's used it for that. That's fine. But when it was originally built, this looks like a processing plant. And of course, to your comment, Penny, on one of your videos, that human labor is cheap. You don't have to manufacture machines. You don't have to manufacture robots. You don't have to do any of that. We have a computer up here. We're programmable, you know, so to speak, and we can do hard labor. And we, by all accounts, we do that off-world.
Well, that's why we do it off-world, is because a robot that is fully robotic has to be reprogrammed for every step of the task, where a human can be told, go move that over there, and can adapt all the steps in between.
Yeah.
So just for food, water, shelter, clothing.
Yeah.
And when they need medical care, if they're a good worker, you give it to them. If they're not, you don't.
Yeah.
And yes, that is how they operate.
Jeez. Well,
on that, I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I have to go.
I was just thinking that too. I saw you stretching, John, and I know we've been on for about 2 hours. So
I have a bad back. I got more titanium in my back than a Formula One drivetrain. You know.
There you go.
Holding it together, and it creates a lot of. I got to go take a fistful of Tylenol and human other.
Is there anything that you wanted to plug about your Little Anton book, or anything that's coming up in the future?
No, that in your other video. I don't need to plug my book.
No worries.
People can find my website. You know, you know, my only thing is, you know, I want to give back to society. I never charge for my work or anything. You know, why would I? You know, and so reminds me, I got to give a donation to Penny. Penny, you don't have PayPal, do you?
Actually, I do. Yes.
All right, never mind. I'll get to it.
You'll figure it out.
This is
excellent. Well, John, thank you
bacon.
very much for your time today. I do appreciate it. I look forward to talking to you again. Penny, thank you very much for joining us. If there's anything that you would like to promote before we head out.
Oh, I just have my usual ongoing weekly radio show, and I have a TV show that's on Fringe TV, which is a streaming service on Roku, and it's called, both of them are called Nachtwaffen Pilot. I've been trying to brand so that I'm findable through various media, and I'm covering the territory of UFO, super soldier, SSP, and Anunnaki experiencers, and with the goal of stopping the kidnapping.
Beautiful. I support that 100%.
110%.
Right. And folks, if you want to follow along with me, just, you know, here's the YouTube page, like, subscribe, share, ring the bell. And then check out my new website, deciphering.tv, and let me know what you think about it. And we'll always try to make improvements. So everybody, thank you very much for tuning in today and coming out to join us on Deciphering My Experience. Have a wonderful day. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. See you next time.